Is America in trouble? Is the world ditching the US dollar? There's been a lot of talk in the news lately about the US dollar being replaced as the world's reserve currency. And a lot of this noise is sensationalized. It's just that, it's noise. So the intention of this video is to help you understand what's actually happening and how it's going to affect the United States and you. So first, we need to understand how the US dollar became the reserve currency of the world. And that happened back in 1944 due to the Bretton Woods Agreement. And under this agreement, the US dollar was crowned the world's reserve currency and backed by the largest supply of gold reserves. This made the US dollar one of the strongest currencies in the world and dethroned the UK's pound sterling for that top spot. This agreement also established a fixed exchange rate between individual countries' central bank currencies, the currencies of that country, and the US dollar. So, due to the Bretton Woods Agreement in 1944, the US dollar became the world's reserve currency. But what exactly does a reserve currency mean? What does it do? It means that countries across the world keep a large amount of US dollars on hand to use for international trade and transactions. This helps facilitate global trade and investments while reducing exchange rate risk. And exchange rate risk is when a country has to trade its own currency for the reserve currency to do international trade and business. There's a risk that in doing that exchange, you lose value and purchasing power. So having US dollars on hand, which again is recognized as the world's reserve currency, makes it easier for you to do business. Many commodities like gold and oil are priced in the reserve currency US dollars to make it easier to transact business. If you're buying oil from a supplier, that's going to be done in US dollars, and everybody across the world understands that same price. Now, there are countries like the BRIC nations, Brazil, Russia, India, and China, who want to move away from the US dollar for international trade and transactions. But this isn't new. They've actually been saying this for many years. I'll give you an example. In 2010, the BRIC nations, again, Brazil, Russia, India, and China, announced plans to create their own alternative to the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. And they would call this the New Development Bank. The New Development Bank was created so that these nations had an institution that was not dominated by the US and other Western nations. Now, despite BRICS and other countries wanting to move away from the US dollar, it still accounts for over 60% of all global foreign exchange reserves and still remains the dominant currency in international trade and business. And second place on that list is the euro with 20% of global currency reserves. So, what happens if the US dollar is no longer the world's reserve currency? There could be significant impacts throughout the global economy. A decline in demand for US dollars could diminish its value, which in turn could make imports more expensive, make US government borrowing more expensive, diminish US influence in the global economy, and lead to higher inflation in the United States. But before that could happen, countries would have to find a replacement, something to replace the US dollar as the world's reserve currency, like the euro, the yuan, or creating a new currency backed by all different countries. So, can the US dollar actually be replaced as the world's currency? Well, anything is possible. That is certainly a possibility and something that could happen. But I also think that a lot of this is just media hype and sensationalism that's trying to drive clicks and attention. There will always be talk about replacing the US dollar as a reserve currency. There will always be sensationalism in the media trying to make people panic. So what can you as the average person do in light of all this currency talk? The most important thing is focus on yourself and your family. Are you taking care of the things that are within your control? Or are you worrying about things that you have zero control over? And spoiler alert, the US dollar being the world's reserve currency is definitely not within your control. Focus on what you can control and go from there.